that whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
So welcome to part 2 of this video. Again, for those of you who have not maybe watched number 1, you have to, because it's connected, and I'm not sure you're going to understand much if you don't watch number 1. So in this one, we're going to be talking more about the birthing pains, the cosmic birthing pains, what it leads, us into being an integrated healer, which is a being that simply emanates with this light of understanding that, of course, again, it's at different levels it's established, and on each level we establish it anew. It doesn't mean like, oh, now we have established it completely. This is an ongoing journey in this body. Once we move into an embodied ascension, it means that it's going to always continue to expand. So in each level of the space where we can create this integration of understanding, we can simply emanate with the vibration of a certain healing. So all healing is vibrational. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have a specific words or teachings behind it, especially knowledge. And that's what in this book, the Jeshua channeling, they specifically address, is that when you're healing from a knowledge perspective, it's still a little controlling, because you think you're right. And even though you are, you're still not using your intuition through this Christed nature, which is this benevolent force of love, in an equal reciprocity, give and take, right? This understanding. So you read someone's energies, they read yours, and it's an infinity symbol motion. So when I have my own sessions, I work the same way. None of the sessions is the same. Even the way I am is not the same. So it all has to flow intuitively, and in each moment, what's channeled through will be so specific that I don't have a structure or a framework in which I can put it and say, I heal through this method and that method. It doesn't exist. And this is the heart-centered way. This is the new way. And in my life, for many years, people have been telling me, oh, I need to do workshops and teach this and that. I've always felt in my body a strong no. And recently, they've actually congratulated me. My group, they said, if I did it this way, probably I had a lot of money, which I don't. I have to say I don't. I always have month per month, and that's it. I don't even have like savings or so like most people have. So they said that it's great that I'm so loyal to myself to really bring in the new platform, the new template, because the old template is like, oh, I have learned something, it's a knowledge, and I share it with others. And people do that constantly via these workshops. It still might not have any relation to you, even if you go to a workshop or whatever, because it's still going to be learned. So the true way of learning is through this inner reservoir of knowledge that keeps on pouring through you. But even though it's a knowledge that comes specifically, it's a sort of guidance, it has to become unified. And only when it's unified and it's applied through this integrated understanding, it has the capability of being wisdom, of crystallizing into wisdom. So volunteer soul types are those who guide through wisdom. We don't necessarily teach. We don't teach through knowledge or application of something specific. That's why when people ask me what I do, I'm like, I can't find specific words for it. All I could just say, well, I don't know, I'm here to be the embodiment of Christ consciousness and be a conduit for Holy Spirit. That's basically all I could say. There's sometimes implications that go deeper into a more specific nature of what I do as well, here in nature being the creation pillar and all. But these are all aspects. So this larger purpose, right? Basically, it's it's like an overviewing reality, like this overseeing nature that we're all plugged into. It's just that we're accessing and applying it at different degrees of awareness. That's all. Okay, to be the light in the dark, we've already talked about that and why specifically volunteer souls choose that path, because there's aspects of creation that simply need to be embraced by love. And our last barrier, I feel, in this journey to really embodying this volunteering consciousness, which is the consciousness of pure creation, of purity, of being whatever it is in each moment, that it's not like specific, it's not forced, it's not like willed into experience, it's just like being the vessel for it. is being the vessel, but at the same time, not just like empty vessel, but a co-creative vessel. And this is the feminine, right? The vessel, and the masculine, the light that creates in a unique way through that vessel experience, which now has planted the seed of our illumined child to come alive. And this will be the main focus of this theme. But before we go into that, right? This journey of the Lightworker, please read this book for a high understanding of this in the Joshua channeling. So in this book, I'm just going to have a very short presentation here. There's a different approach to what we call a Lightworker being than in most cases, in most books or references, because, you know, Lightworkers are so highly valued and they're so special and whatnot, right? In this book, it really realistically addresses this topic of what does Lightworker truly mean. And like I said, we're shifting to the template of light beings instead of light workers, because we don't need to work for the light. Light already works through us. So we're light bearers, we're light beings, that's all, okay? We're not special in any way. It's just that, like he says, Joshua, that our galactic history and origin is different than the types of soul beings that we're developing primarily here on Earth. So because we have, in a way, a larger lifespan in terms of galactic history, we've gone through much more. So the soul age here is viewed as an experience, which does lead to wisdom. Not always, right? There's many ancient souls who are actually controlling still through the dark aspect. So they have been completely immersed by the dark. So they did not know, like I explained in the first video, how to be the light in the dark. They were so consumed with the dark that they actually went into the other extreme of being this counterpart energy playing out. So this means that to be a light worker and being aware that you kind of are here to serve the light still has to be balanced and neutralized in order to come back into the Christ consciousness integration. So he kind of shares a lot about this in this galactic root. So in some point in history and time, when the human race or the humankind was created, there was, in a way, an intervention. There was like almost like a divine intervention in a way through what we call these light worker beings. And many of them also influenced this realm, this creation in their own way. So let's say they would be the smarty pants, right, of the experience. So someone who's mastered a certain level of knowledge, and they said, now we can apply this knowledge. So they applied it through this human experience in a way that sometimes took away the component of individual will for human beings. And that's why some of them have gotten so lazy and, like I said in the first part, nonchalant, even not caring about what's happening, because something was almost like taken away. It was almost like they were being babied, okay? So when you're being babied, you kind of develop this stance of being a little passive. Some of it was also a little passive aggressive, but there was a feeling, you know, of stagnation here, and it wasn't done let's say necessarily out of an spite or something bad or negative. But imagine like you know something, right? Let's say you're in school and you learn something and you're kind of like a little more advanced than what the rest of the group is still learning about. And like you're like, wow, you're first so infatuated with it in the way you've individually accessed that and you've applied that within yourself. And you think, wow, because it helped me, it can also help that aspect, okay? So the human race, as you know, was created through many DNA interventions, through many, let's not say infiltrations because that has a negative connotation to it, but many contributions of the light, and not also all just of the pure light. It was meant to be an integrating force of love and to achieve spiritual alchemy the way no other, let's say, race or galactic contribution did before. So there could be a continuation of growth as always. But there was also interference in the way that did also a little disservice. So when the Lightworker types started to incarnate on the planet, going through their own lifetimes, was to understand the human nature. So imagine you create something and then you go into the incarnation of that creation, which you also yourself helped to achieve. This was all written here. So that's kind of like a long history. So many of these souls now are returning, and they have been returning for many eons. So they could themselves master this karmic cycle, so they could complete it eventually. And this does intersect with the planetary karmic cycle being completed. It's being completed at this time. So this intersects and interlocks. That's why the energies now are so important at this time. And you have so many of these so-called light workers. But the overriding challenge is to come back to ourselves through our origin. So the path was long for so many beings of light. They have been traveling, having all these, gathering these experiences. And now the point of synthesis, which I talk about, is the unified ascension, which is when all these experiences have to go back and return to the one, so that you fully remember who you are, your origin, whatnot. And it's not about, oh, I've been through this in that lifetime and I've been this, or some beings were incarnating from the denser polarity experience, and some beings stayed like hovering above, doing more inward or inner realm studies, so this could be always polarized, balanced, and equal matter. So it doesn't matter who, those of us who are here now, which one was on which side and what, it really doesn't matter. When you know your galactic history, you feel it at the soul level, but you don't need to talk about it, or put a signpost like, I was this one, I did this, I did this. It's not about that. Again, remember, unity consciousness is the unified project of light. It's an experience, and therefore it is also an experiment. So whoever has a certain role within the experiment, it's different. It's a different contribution. That's all there is. The only thing you need to do is to apply yourself through your own unique contribution, which means you only need to know your contribution. So because of all this, right, they knew they've kind of put aspects of, the moment you interfere with something, the moment you have this intervention, you put an aspect of yourself into the experience. So because these aspects were planted in humanity, they also themselves, the Lightworker being said, oh, we now need to experience this because we've planted these aspects, now we're becoming them. So they were becoming themselves to the human experience, as in also in parallel, there were also new souls coming in that didn't have such a long predecessing galactic history. That's all the difference, right? When we talk about the star seed or starborn souls and earthborn souls, it's just about where you started your experience or your cycle of soul growth. So they explain this beautifully here, that when the humanity was at this crucial cycle, right, of it's like still young souls evolving and learning about themselves. And that's when this intervention happened. And because there was still such vulnerability there with this interference, I think in a way this vulnerability was somehow lost. It's kind of like the loss of innocence. And some people call that the fall. It's many different perceptions, and use that as in relation to seeing or viewing that as archetypes. So when you see yourself as, oh, I'm a light worker, I do good for the planet or for others, maybe don't look at yourself like this anymore, just this way. See that you're also here to do your own growth, okay? Because we're always going to say, oh, I'm here to help others and assist. I'm only here for that. Whenever you tell yourself this, you're partially living in a lie, because we're all here to have our own unique experience with this body, within this body, and for the body, for the embodiment process. So it's all three, right? So when you're doing this transformation within yourself, you're already assisting the whole. You're already helping to bring healing light to the planet, to others. But you're not here like, oh, I'm just here to help others. God, Lord, I ever be served in what way? You're really viewing reality from a narrow point or perspective. So more about this in this channeling. But what I want to talk about now, this was the journey of a light worker, which is now becoming synthesized and complete for many beings who are ready to complete, to finally finish this karmic cycle of non-interference, of coming back into wholeness, re-experience yourself as your birthing point, knowing your galactic ancestry and history, not to put yourself like a special person, it's like put yourself in an advertising market or something, but to just know your place in creation and to serve it with love and joy and understanding, so you don't have to fix anything. Read this book. They also say you don't need to fix or change anything. Just be accepting of the reality as it is. And, when you're improving it by not even improving yourself. That's the wrong word, but you're refining yourself. That's my, choice of preference for this word. So this illumination of the inner child I want to talk about now, which is also in this automatic writing. It's funny, right? Because in this video, we're talking about the completion of this karmic cycle. And with this writings, there's two of them. One was received on the day of the full moon, one the day before. And with this writing, I've actually run out of this book. It was my, no, the Buddha one was before. Yeah, it was partially Buddha, because the Buddha is here, as you can see. Because my Buddha notebook is gone. I need a new one. I want one with a sacred rose. If you can find me somewhere, I don't find it yet, but that's my new chapter. It's going to be all this divine feminine perspective. So the first thing I want to share here is, right, you can read more about the cosmic birthing pains here. So, right, the overall thing is, we were all a part of this cosmic womb of oneness, and then we went out into the darkness to explore, right? Great pioneers, explorers, wow, of life. What we're going to create, no one knows, right? But there we go, here we go, I'm coming. And this, even when you come as a volunteer soul on the planet, at first you're volunteering and you're so happy and you see all great potential, and then you come here, you're like, what the heck? What was I thinking? That's partially a part of the experience too. So just because you are a part of this illumined group, doesn't mean you're not going to have these same feelings. You're not going to go through all these feelings, because you are re-entering a human experience. Even though from an illumined perspective, you're still going into the unknown. You're still going into dark. Like I said, you are now, before you were light in the light, you illumine yourself. Now the next part of the training is to be the light in the dark. This is the hard part. Not the hard, but it's not like the soul needs to prove itself like it's worthy of. It's like the soul does not have the kind of tendency. When the soul is driven through spirit, that's what drives the soul, right? The soul is the part that experiences. So whenever people say, oh, create this and that, and what we're creating in the physical is your reflection, it's still black and white perception. It's not always, if it's not acknowledging the soul reality experience, what the soul creates in order to have a certain experience in life, then it only acknowledges the physical human part. So everything is a reflection of you as your physicality. And the soul history is long, and the soul choices span beyond this, what you consider your current manifestation circle. It has to go beyond. So your understanding of what this is has to move beyond as well. If you want to understand manifestation from a soul perspective and different soul agreements that we made. Let's not say contracts, because that has a limiting connotation to it, but let's say soul agreements that we made. So a soul, when it has an agreement to accomplish something, it does it with enthusiasm. It's kind of like, ooh, I've mastered this. Ooh, now it would be so awesome to master this. Wouldn't it be? That's the kind of gist that the soul has. It's not like, oh, I have to master myself, so much hard work, rolling with the eyes. It's more the first scenario, right? But here on the earth, we're like, we're more like the second scenario. Okay, so how to now merge the two? I'm laughing because I that they're laughing. That's what they're showing me. It's not like, oh. It's more like, yeah, ooh. So because I've done this, I'm so eager to, let's try this now. Am I able, with this consciousness that I have now, create this and this? Wow, wouldn't be awesome? And it doesn't have like expectation on it, like if I fail, I'm a failure in school. No, it's like, wow, I'll do my best. I'll do anything in my power of love. But if not, okay, the next cycle, there's always the next and the next and the next. So that's how things go. When you understand this, the soul truth and reality, there is no like, oh, we need to fix this and we need to ascend. All of us, or we're doomed. We're doomed. What we're talking about now, things being so radical, most and all, is because the planet, what we're doing environmentally, is so much in crisis. This definitely does speak of a crisis in consciousness as well. But when you're looking at it from a soul perspective, there is no crisis. From a soul perspective, it's like, we will do our best. And it's driven through unconditional love, not judgment. When you come back, it's like no one says, okay. We recently did this meditation, and I said, what if I choose, let's say I fail and I go back. And there's no conditions for me in the physical world. I'm no longer sustained in the physical. What else am I going to do? I'm going to go back, right? And the response was like, yeah, okay. There were other souls who were very brave. They went into physicality. Some of them couldn't handle it. They went back. And there's no judgment here in the spirit world about this process. It's all an agreement. An agreement means like you're free in your agreement. You're not conditioned. So this process now, okay, like I said in the first part, the way they showed it to me is when this karmic cycle is completing, this higher mind, right, what we did, we thought was better, we thought it was best, the experiment goes this way or that way, we all have an implanted part of us, and this is the ET part of us, right? The angelic aspect we all have is not like this, is pure unconditional love, and it's creation force within us. And this is what I call the embodiment of the Elohim consciousness. It's just that pure creative potential, right? So the ET self, which was all these experiences, different stellar regions, different, right? Different experiences within that led us to certain realizations. That part remembers this controlling aspect that went also into the human experience. It moved from other quadrants of time and space, right? Different regions, and it moved also, and it was planted also as the seed on earth, because there was this interference planted the seed as well in the human experience. It wasn't just the innocence, it was also this. Because everything you plant with, it's a reflection of that consciousness. So that knowledge that was a part of the galactic inheritance went into this, right? And this is what in the Garden of Eden they call it the sin, right? The ego, the knowledge, right? Is the sin. It's not a sin. It's just the journey that's set in motion that eventually will lead a soul into its maturity. Again, it's an experiment, so there is no judgment about it. Like they said here in the book, that this process also had a beautiful higher purpose to it, and now it's becoming more and more apparent. So the only thing that was, keeping us in this separation mode is that the knowledge was not fully illumined. So before that occurs, you're always going to use an aspect of will, and this will be controlling. So if you imagine, like, I'm going to share it from my own experience, right? This ET part of me, this extraterrestrial being that knows so much, has this knowledge, and this sometimes thinks it knows better. And it will sometimes prevent the inner child of having its own wisdom. That's in a nutshell how I can explain it. And it's translate that into a greater experience, right? A certain Galactic said, we know what's best for you humans, so we're going to do it this way. Now that needs to come back and play itself out a full circle, which it occurred during all these incarnations that humans went through. And the Lightworker souls is a part of this as well. So now we're going so deep. This is coming to the surface, and what's coming more and more to the surface, and I'm noticing it within my body, is this, whenever I want to act on something, there's a force within me that's so gentle that stops me. It prevents me. And there's an aspect of me that feels like, but why? Why do I have to wait? I want to do something. I'm my own creator. You see, that's how this is clashing. And until it's clashing, it means it's not yet integrated. And within us now, we need to have so much patience for this process. Is like, until they're no longer going to crash, right? They're going to be both. This is when, like I said, the light being comes. This is when the awakening happens. You're being lifted up. You're being pulled up into divine remembrance. And then integration occurs, the melting point, right? The melting process happens, and that part leaves all the seeds, all the knowledge, all the wisdom here. But then it leaves the aspect that's no longer required will leave. And we will witness that as the second birthing pain, right, in a way, because now we're birthing this in the physical body. Now before it was the soul, right, leaving into the unknown, and we felt this cosmic birthing pain, like being separated from the whole of this ocean of unity, oneness consciousness. Now this is taking place in the body, so we're re-experiencing that for a reason. I'm going to read you the writing to go further into it. We're going to understand everything. It's all in the writing. Otherwise I'm going to freeze because it's very cold here. It was so beautiful and sunny, and now they made these chemtrails, which makes it impossible for me to be in the warm light of the sun. So I'm going to start reading here, and you will now see how Spirit will gently guide into this knowing of why this is happening. And you might translate it into your own life experience if you were feeling it now. If not, let it be. Maybe will come, and maybe return, watch again at that time, or maybe is planted within you as a seed. But these seedlings now, we are ready to come full circle. And the full circle is not ascension as we're moving somewhere up. The full circle is only complete when the ascendant aspect can be planted in any experience, any condition, and be fully in awareness of itself. So that this ocean of cosmic unity we once knew, and then we separated from it for a reason, to go and venture on this beautiful journey of the soul, to have all these experiences that will eventually lead into illumination. Now this illumination, once it's accomplished within an individual soul consciousness, wants to be planted for, the kind of dissemination process. So, okay. And the point being here, as I'm going to start reading, is that the body now has to become the first creation, the first source, the house of divine, God, whatever you call it, source, unity. And this means that from the body, when you're fully in your body, whatever you go, wherever you are is your home. And sometimes we experience that as, I never had like a real beautiful home on earth, like ever. And I'm 35 years old, and I've never had like a home that really felt like my own extension, my own translation of my own liquid light, my own being, my essence being reflected to me. And that was for a reason. Like they said, you had to first feel that home so fully in your body, so that nothing can sway you off, from the center, which is your home. Okay, let us begin. So this is how it happens. Okay. At first, you will feel your home inwardly and spiritually. So for me, that was happening in my first awakening years. I was like so highly elevated. I felt better like I felt than later. Like now, in the recent year, I felt like the worst. But it wasn't like retrograding back and like worsening my conditions. It was moving further and further down. The descension process can be very painful. The ascension, or the first ascension, which is the awakened ascension, it feels very ecstatic and blissful. But this is now the embodied bliss. I talk about this in my Cosmic Consciousness video mastery course as well. It's part of this. We have the 3 vortices in our body. Only when all of the 3 are fully active and in alignment, and this triad is fully built, you really are existing as an integrated whole creator being. Elohim consciousness, the way we were separated from it now returns back, completes its cycle. It's almost like, if you see it from a cosmic perspective, you build a body, like your source creator self, then you have to inhabit that body, then you have to lift up that body, then you come back in that body in this uplifted state and renew the body. That's the greatest alchemy we can imagine. Okay, so this first part, the inwardly spiritually feeling at home, then you knew who you are and you can begin your mission, and that is the feeling of your source. Then it eventually begins to wane, this feeling, and now all of a sudden it's no longer there, it's no longer present. Now that inner spiritual home of the deep knowing must be then translated into the physical body, and the keys to the higher self must be handed over to the inner child, letting him, her, drive now, drive the experience, drive the vessel. Let it take the lead and illuminate the way. It was very hard sometimes to live in this physical body for many, but we know that this aspect of control within, this control freak often cannot be in charge any longer, and we will feel this. It's like, no, I cannot live this way. And we're going to sometimes even say out loud, I said it many times, I cannot live like this any longer. It was like super loud, but it's good because we're acknowledging the change, the shift. So it feels draining and depleting of the vital life force energy, because this resistance will use a lot of our vital life force energy. The mind no longer has all the answers, right? And for us who are coming from this star-born perspective, it's like this higher mind, just like knows so much, but it can also be debilitating in a way. So it's like a wise man now that must go blind, and now the blinkers must be lit in a different way. Something must change, and we must let ourselves die completely, not just partially. It's like a little safe death. It has to be total risk. Plunge, a deep plunge into the abyss. This is now, I'm going to read you the initiation where it lies. This is when Spirit will begin to speak. Only the death of this inner controller will lead into something new, possibly a better and brighter life. The all-wise self feels sometimes so remote and small. It no longer has the power it once had. And this, you might feel like a withdrawal of this guidance, or the all-knowing, always knowing where you're going, and this charted course of action. So the process of body alchemy changed everything, and the key player has changed. Truly, only the inner child can now lead the way forward, no longer being overly protected or controlled. It must be set free again, right? To live now this illumination that we carry within as a being. That's also described here in the book. I think there's also in one of the last few words of the cosmic birthing pains. Wait a minute, let me see. Okay, it's here. See how often you feel like you need the presence of another person in your life. This, in fact, is a signal from your inner being that you need to turn inwards and find the lost child within. The solution to your loneliness lies in this turning inward, in the careful embrace of that precious child within that has carried the emotional burden for you. When you take responsibility for that child, when you connect to it and guide it in a loving parent, as a loving parent, you are setting your relationships free, because you set yourself free. So you can now relate to other human beings, to life in general, right? In a free and independent way. So it's like you heal that inner wound of separation, of feeling lost, abandoned, alone. And for us who are volunteer souls, our abandonment is felt more the collective. It's felt more like, wow, the collective feels this way, and we will absorb it. We will definitely feel it, and we have to, again, go through it ourselves. We have to embrace this experience. So now the Spirit begins to speak. Like the story of the Lightworkers and their journey, who have manipulated the human experience at a certain point in time with their all-consuming knowledge. And now the only way to truly heal this is to let go and let the divine child lead the way into the new. The higher self was the guide, the watcher, the observer, but only until that was needed. It felt safer this way, but also sometimes a little sterile. You know, it gave you the experience. The inner child didn't always get what it wanted. It's like, no, we need to do this first and achieve and set this template, right? So the love experience was missing to a certain extent. It was always there. It was still there, but not nearly as vulnerable as it could have been. And now the surrendering of the keys to the house of the God on earth needs to occur. And it's yet a most difficult and painful process at times, because the higher mind and divine intelligence, which used to solve it, right, solve everything, it can no longer operate in the same way. Now, the heart of the child, which is also this unified heart, the core, in its pure innocence, must lead the way forward. It's definitely not easy when a knower, right, turns into a crystal jewel of pure innocence, the second-born innocence, which is now wisely innocent. But that does not occur without final letting go, without the cherry on top. This must be done while the umbilical cord is fully cut, the so-called final cut. There is an aspect that fears this unknown, and therefore it creates unnecessary drama and turmoil, right? That's the resistance. That's like, no, I want to escape this. I don't want to be here, right? Like many people say. And there's more vulnerability present now because there's a less mothering involved in this whole process, and the stronger one was in this grip, the tighter it becomes and the harder it is to let go. But I'm not talking about here mothering in terms of the divine mother who only embraces all with love. That's the distorted mothering, right? It's like you are a matriarch through your own experience, which you think it's better than something that someone knows who hasn't gone through so much as you. You know, recently I've really realized why, for me, the integration took place with the relationship I have with my mother, because she's more like this innocent earth child, and I'm more like this star child that's sometimes like, no. And her opinions are sometimes in my life are like, what's your logic telling you this is so beyond, like, come on, grow up. And it was to integrate both this innocent, pure child, seeing things sometimes maybe sometimes even in a silly way, but it also has a point, it has a fact, it has a wisdom in it, right? So this is where the controlling freak, like I always know how to do it right and best, and this way is surrendering. And this is the inner process. The outer, right, the outer relationships or reality will mirror that to us. So the tighter the grip, the harder it will be to let go. With other words, the ones who are the greatest matriarchs of this time will have the greatest challenge of letting go. Hello. So a feeling of unsafety and lack of support shall arise at this stage as well, for everyone along this process in their own way. But imagine it like a beautiful glowing light touching this human form in order to reawaken it through divine orchestration and grace, right? Like I showed you. And then you lift it up, then whoosh. It's not a separation, it's a unification in truth. So, but eventually that goes away, for it must, right? It lifts off. Now everything is planted within, and that's where the sprouting will occur. So it's still there, only in a much different form, and more of an observer and watcher than a caretaker. For the merging process is now complete from within. So this means that every human now turning into crystalline divine child must now do and walk this journey on their own. And hence the Lightworker karmic cycle will complete itself. So every one of them experiencing what they once co-created at the beginning of humanity's immaturity phase as that preceding era. It was like mothering and babying from a greater perspective. The DNA was shared, it was infused, it was infused in the human experience, yes, the codes were set and the groundwork was laid, and mostly laying dormant until the adolescence period, which is now turning into the age of adulthood and maturity for humanity. And so every soul that spins within this cycle now must now undergo this process and re-experience the traumatic experience of the great abandonment or the cosmic birthing pains, right? Which links even deeper with the cosmic birthing pains at the beginning of time of each individualized soul's creation. And with this re-experiencing, a true and lasting integration of the human experience and illumination can begin. The stage of illumined creation and maturity of the inner child. This, in a nutshell, is the only true and lasting foundation that can set the stage for a lasting heart-centered consciousness and living reality in terms of density. Whoever will participate in this grandiose letting go process at this time will anchor so much courage and determination for this collective process. And here I felt really like cheering us on, like cheering forward. This will plant the seeds of the new consciousness and era that will be slowly and gradually coming into existence one by one. As you know, consciousness of the collective is our reflection. Because this process is so different, an example can be compared to a rocket liftoff. Not different, difficult, right? Like a rocket liftoff and how much energy consumption it actually requires, right? The first ones who have set out to do this under achievement and agreement of the soul were the volunteer souls. They were the first determined bright sparks that wanted to complete this unification process, for this merger truly is what divine union means, right? The birthing of the illumined child within and without, an independent source of its own creation that's fully liberated, sovereign, and unique in its rising state of illumination. So people say divine union is two people coming together. That's still only temporary. So therefore, here they will say it like it is. Divine union is truly not a romanticized version of a relating experience, right? But it is actually a creation of this alchemical embodied union through the union of inner masculine and feminine aspects of self, which together make this unification and creation process possible and complete. And so the knowing and the not knowing can truly be unified in this way. So the mundane, the reality, right? The physical reality and the mysterious, right? This magic. So brave ones are those who will initiate this embodied ascension process first. Alleluia. Welcome to the new unknown. They were also showing me this ascension as most perceive it, like ascension happens once and you move up and you ascend and you become an ascended master. I think in the second channeling they will reveal more about this. This is the first ascension, and there's many, many ascensions that follow. If you have no clue about this, you want to become more illumined in that, I have a whole mastery course. It's actually my Galactic region quadrant of my page, and it's called Multidimensional Ascension. So let's read this one, and then I'm already frozen, right? Right, let's try before I freeze. The cycle now comes back into itself in order for there to be completion. The light that has been planted into the dark has now grown its seeds to the extent where new growth is finally possible, thanks to the gentle and yet persistent nurturers and caretakers of this cosmic process. True multidimensional ascension is so much more than most imagine it to be, that many say it is. Exactly what I said, right? Every stage of an ascension triggers a new level of expansion, which then travels back into its creation itself in order to fill it with that light of liberation and illumination that itself has gained and realized during the personal ascension process. Oh, and before I forget, just before this, when I was in a 2-day trip to Italy, we walked around this whole hill, and the hill was called Carmen, like Mount Carmen, and it's like Mount Karma. Come on, and this was all about this completion. It was, you can make this stuff up, okay? How everything is interconnected. I was laughing, and in that trip, I shared on Instagram, I saw 2 praying mantises. You have to believe me, but I've never seen them in physical before in my life, like touched them, seen them in nature, because I live in a colder climate and they're living in warmer climate. So we were on the warmer side of the Alps, and I was like, and there were 2, right? 2 beings. It was amazing. So anyway, where did I leave off? So it travels back in itself, right? And so with each such return, remembrance, and reinvention, the personal ascension journey becomes more collective, more connected, more unified, and embedded into the whole, therefore more unified, right? Like I said. So therefore, each individual initiation of an individual soul sparkle links in directly into the whole, making it brighter and more refined. During each initiation, there will be a seeming pause, a silence, a self-forgetting. However, it is not truly so, right, when we travel through the dark of the unknown, for it only appears that way on the surface. The reason for this is that it triggers a deeper need for more, to search and go deeper. In the silence alone, true reinvention can happen. It does not occur if the external circumstances remain the same. Hence, the greatest initiators of life will move through the greatest challenges, spiking ups and downs, which will trigger a new growth process, the planting of seeds for new consciousness and therefore new life. So that's why I said it's not a static journey. You will feel great and you're always going to feel great. It's always going to be like new set off, new template, new creation, new challenges because of it. Now, more about this full moon. We had a Taurus full moon. So far, the Ascension initiations were focused on achieving the strength and stamina that was required for an optimum and ultimate light body integration process, right? This was what I showed you. So, however, once this is established and complete within a soul being, there will be a reorientation of focus into building the grounding cord into this reality, the embodiment work for the new template. In the previous video, I made a video specifically about the new body template. One example given was the journey of the so-called ascended masters who have found the right trigger and pushed the button to elevate themselves beyond the grounded, rooted experience in matter. However, this was not the completion of the ascension journey, the totality of what great Holy Spirit as the embodiment of love desires to experience. The ascension beyond the current experience and template as the elevation process is only half of the game being played here in the grand design of life. Therefore, every ascended one will eventually return in order to uplift the forms that itself once inhabited, also contributed to, right? As love returned as that ultimate divine reunion. Therefore, the journey of divine reunion requires a deeper knowledge and understanding of this process. Therefore, the silent initiations occur so that the physical temple is being readied and prepared to be able to hold this knowing and understanding within its container or the physical vessel as the home on earth, the body as the last of the triad of the spirit, soul, and body triad, right? When the soul is fully overcome with the living light of spirit, the one remaining desire of the soul will be to carry that experience of ultimate illumination into the living embodied experience, and with it illuminating the physical form which it presently carries, and with this also contributing to the collective experience of a unified multidimensional ascension, which is truly cosmic in nature. Within it, all planets, stars, constellations, and galaxies are intertwined and interconnected, interdependent upon each other, for nothing ever truly exists without the other. All life sprung out from the whole as one, joined in a cosmic celebration, dance of life itself, and therefore it's always unified at the core level of the underlying source experience. Therefore, to personally ascend as a soul being in a form of transcendence ultimately brings that experience of life liberated and free back into life itself. The experience itself desires to come full circle, to become itself fully on all levels in all experiences. As the embodiment on earth while experiencing physicality at the deepest level of density, this is the most often forgotten aspect. However, a feeling always remains at the core level. Right, is here where we most often forget, but there's within our core there's still a feeling, a sparkle, a remembrance of this greater longing for what we wish to create in this way. So this feeling is expressed as a constant longing for something more, like that, but there's more, don't you ever have that? I'm sure you do. For that ultimate experience of life becoming fully illumined on all levels. And yes, it is not easy for an illumined essence of life to return itself into the non-illumined forms of itself as life. It is rather challenging, and that's why it is often called volunteering, because it's still new and non-tested, especially in this part of the universal experience of life. So in our quadrant of time and space, it's very challenging for us to achieve that. But they said this, look, however, it has been done before and continues to be done, and it shall continue always, as the sum of all parts as one, coming together to dance this dance of life in human form, which serves as the integration anchor point for many universal structures and experiences of life, many dimensions and realities within which various beings play with life until life is ready to return to itself as fully illumined. Therefore, the only task or mission of illumined souls will remain to merge with life on all levels beyond any judgment or control, to embrace it with utter unconditional love and compassion, almost like holding the most precious jewel in your hands, right? In our hands. This is an extensive journey, an unpredictable one, but a beautiful one, full of every feeling possible and imaginable. All must be felt and experienced as the re-experiencing of every single human condition through either the self or others, to feel so deeply that in the end only love will remain. And that love is life itself, until it is all ready to come back into itself. So it is at the core and become fully illumined. And then I ran out of my notebook. Otherwise, I'm sure there'd be more, but then I had more time to spend here with you and freeze to death. As a reminder, I want to say, if you want to support my work instead of taking it for granted, like I know most people do still, because I feel it, but you can still, participate in any way possible. There's personal services I offer. There are mastery courses and multidimensional, galactic courses, and also many activations there on my page. But also you can donate, or you can become my Patreon. Remember, for $5 or more, you can attune to the monthly energies that I will be offering each month for the Ascension journey, where we are at, where the current universal support is, with the waves that we travel in. And I know people travel in different waves, but this is for my group, for people who are at that level of understanding and initiation, and they're ready to move on. So they've showed me that there's not a lot of souls who are ready. There's some who are getting to, they're readying themselves to have this understanding return to them. But there's only a few who are actually already doing this embodiment work. And I applaud all those of you who know you are, because you're probably going to have these experiences yourself. When your overriding template will fully shift, sometimes it will feel like, what the heck's happening? And you won't be satisfied until these answers come. And I'm grateful if I help to set a spark of the flame within you to illuminate this process, as my purpose as a spirit guide here, because I've part of the team that we've set this foundation for this to occur, and we were probably very enthusiastic about it. It's not always going according to plan, but then again, plan is something that continues to readjust according to where the energies are at this time. So the only last thing I want to say is, with all this process, with all this shifting, the sun is returning, but it's still very much covered up. Please be so present with yourself that you will watch for any information coming to you that will present knowledge in a way that Ascension is only like moving upwards. Use your discernment. That's not the entirety of Ascension. Perhaps there's people who are experiencing this, and like I said, they're not yet illumined beings themselves. They're sharing only from a limited perspective. It's also sharing, right? Love shares. But sometimes when these people were presenting in a way that that's all there is, it's still not going to be creating this state of liberation within. It's still going to create this feeling of separation, like we're needing to go somewhere. Life in itself, in its wholeness, it's in everything. Like love is in everything. And before we get that, before we live this way and truly embody it, we're still going to exist only as a partial, fragmented being. And love is not that way. Love is unifying. So if you want to support my work, there's many ways how you can do it, and please do support it, because that keeps me going. And this month, I have to tell you, this month was like I received probably almost like zero support, and it was challenging for me because of this spiraling downwards and Venus retrograde and all of that. And although people will always be smarty pants and say, oh, you create your experience, blah, blah. No, we're creating it together. That's unity consciousness. And if there's, like I said, there's people who will not see that as valuable, and they won't value it, taking it rather for granted, like I said in the first part, then it won't grow. That's a collective choice, that it's not just one individual that has all the power to do. Even for me, I'm powerless if I also don't have assistance coming from outside. That's the interdependence aspect. I can have all this source, I can channel information, but if I don't have physical means to get it through, to get it across, if I'm not physically supported, and again, you see it, my growth is stifled, because we are so interdependent upon each other. And people who only focus on the self-empowerment, like it's only you, they lose a greater aspect of what unity consciousness truly is. I mean, they lose this greater overview, this greater sight of what life truly is in unity consciousness. So those of you who already do support, I thank you so much. I wouldn't have made it this far without you, probably. There's only a few people though, but still, I'm very grateful. I'm very honored. And life serves itself in this way. We're serving life when we're supporting life to grow, and what we want to see grow and thrive, that's what we support. So thank you. I hope this was helpful. It was a long reading. I knew I had to get 2 parts done. I almost froze to death to get this across to you. But as you know, I like to be outside as much as I can. We're going to have lots of rain now, so I'm not sure how that's going to be possible. The rainy season is coming. It's November after all, coming. And I will see you soon in the next update when that is possible, when something comes. When it comes, beautiful, divine timing. In the meantime, stay strong in this process. It is intense, but it's also beautiful. And thank you for being here, for listening, for tuning into, for being a friend, for being a companion, for being a supporter, for being a lover of life. Take care. So much love is in power. Mwah.
Come into my world, the world of the elven song, magical.